So I'm back today with Ethan Buchman in our third video about Cosmos history. Actually, Ethan, you will agree that this is probably the reason why we did this series in the first place, is because we wanted to talk a little bit about informal.
Yeah.
And so we thought we would go all the way back to AIB and talk about the ICF and all that. But the real reason why we did this is to talk about informal. We've noticed over the past couple of weeks that people are curious on Twitter about what informal exactly is, what is the relationship with the ICF, what exactly are we working on in general.
Yeah.
That's what we want to talk about today. So, informal system, Ethan, was that's out in 2020, right? That's out in 2020. You are the ICF, and you spin out informal into a separate company that is focused on formal verification. In my understanding of history, what led you to this decision, and why did you do it that way?
Yeah. So as we mentioned in the previous video, so we were at the ICF in 2019, and we were building a small team there. And due to some of the history between Jay and I, and just some challenges working with All in Bits, we were motivated and encouraged to work on formal methods, to work on Rust development, stuff that was sort of not on the sort of mainline development that All in Bits was working on, and we were also encouraged to think about spinning out into our own entity, and that was something we were all actually quite interested in. We were interested in really building a sort of long-term sustainable business and experimenting with the corporate structure, giving the employees more direct governance rights in how the organization is structured and owned and governed and so on. And none of that's really possible in a foundation, or especially a Swiss foundation. Is very sort of rigid rules about how it's organized and all that sort of stuff. And so we couldn't really do that experimentation there. And so it was was ultimately decided and agreed to that the team that we had built up would spin out into a new company that was going to be structured as a cooperative. So it would be owned on a one person, one vote basis by its employees, and it would continue to work on Cosmos, but on formal methods, on some R&D, on building some of the pieces in Rust, and go from there. And so that's ultimately what we did. So we came to that agreement in the summer of 2019, I think by the end of the summer. And so by January 1st, basically the team had spun out, informal was set up, and we were sort of off and running.
So informal was set up as a Canadian entity, is that right?
That's right.
Canadian entity registered in Toronto. And so what exactly were the terms of the spin out to the ICF? How did that work out?
Yeah, so we had a few different kinds of funding from the ICF. So we had a small investment in the form of a convertible note. So the ICF basically invested $2.5 million upfront into informal, structured as a convertible note. So that's basically structured as debt that would convert into equity in the company in the future. And so informal actually pays interest on that debt every year. I think the interest rate is around 3%. So we paid that back to the ICF, but that gave us some of the bootstrap capital to get things started, and would also entitle the ICF to some stake in informal in the future. So if informal ever raises money and raises equity and so on, the ICF would have some stake in that. And so that would it would give it some sort of economic upside in the future company, but in a way that is more secure than just buying equity, because in the meantime it's debt, it gets paid interest, it gets paid back before anyone else, kind of thing. So and so that kind of aligned to some extent informal and the ICF, and as part of that deal, in order to sort of ensure and maintain a close relationship between informal and the ICF, the CFO of the ICF, Michael Niederer, was elected to informal's board of directors, right? So informal was set up with an initial board of directors that was me, Ariane, and Michael. And Michael sort of representing the ICF's interest in informal, through the investment and so on. So that was the investment funding. Again, that was $2.5 million convertible note, and then informal also had basically a 2-year R&D agreement from the ICF that was to work on core Cosmos R&D and formal methods and some research and stuff. That was actually split into 2 agreements. One was a software deliverables based agreement. So we would only get paid after we delivered certain pieces, and that was for that was actually for writing specs for different parts of the software, and for shipping different pieces of the software in Rust. And then there was a separate research agreement which would be paid I think once a year or every 6 months, and that was to support basically setting up a kind of long-term research entity inside informal that could attract talent from across the world and into Cosmos, and that could really push the frontier on research, especially in formal methods, but also in distributed systems and protocol design and testing software and so on. And so that kind of structure allowed informal to get up and running, and allowed us to navigate both kind of long-term research objectives, but also short-term impact on Cosmos and still helping push Cosmos forward.
Right. I think what's especially interesting here, and probably most people are unaware of that, is that this was not a service agreement that was set up to do core Cosmos dev. It was to do formal verification. That's actually where the name comes from. And so maybe you can talk about formal verification and why that was of interest for you at the time.
Yeah, so the contract was for formal dev. It was also for some development, but the development was primarily in Rust, right? So it was sort of off the mainline development of Cosmos, which was all in Go and was all being done at all in bits at the time, and Informal was sort of spinning out to focus on starting to build up the ecosystem in Rust, which was important for a number of reasons, but to also focus on these formal methods. There's a quote I'm fond of, which is actually the on Microsystems, which is a technology company that had a big impact in sort of the early days of computing, and their mandate was to kick butt, have fun, don't cheat, love your customers, and change computing forever, right? And that's always kind of stuck with me ever since I heard that some number of years ago, and I feel like that also kind of influenced what Informal was trying to achieve, especially that change computing forever kind of piece. Something we really care about really upgrading the quality standards of software engineering as a discipline, right? And so formal methods is how we feel that ought to be done, and that comes from a lot of experience working on production software, really difficult distributed systems that we built, essentially building up Tendermint over the years. And we talked about, I think, in one of the earlier videos or the first video, and we brought Jarko on. He very quickly found a critical bug in Tendermint, and pretty much ever since then, and actually even before, in my thesis, I was already interested in my master's thesis, already interested in formal methods and using some formal specification languages and trying to model protocols. Right, the formal methods really help you reason about protocols and software in a much more rigorous way, right? In a way that's difficult to do in a programming language itself, which are often imperative or even functional, but you can't you can't reason at the same kind of level of abstraction that you can, and with the same ability to kind of verify properties and prove invariants hold. And so with formal methods, you can really gain a lot more certainty about your protocols and that they're designed correctly. They can really help you understand the structure of your protocols and certain complicated nuances or edge cases that can be difficult to reason about. Having the formal methods tooling can really help you kind of reason through those sorts of things. And so we had early on in our while we were at the ICF and we had started building up a team, we had started to prove out some of the value of formal methods. We had actually, Jarko had gone out and recruited a world-class team of researchers at the intersection of formal methods and distributed systems that kind of had their own research program, primarily based out of the University of Vienna, the technical university there. And they have a very strong computer science department, a lot of focus on formal methods. And these guys, especially Josef Vitter and Igor Konov, who would join the ICF and would be part of Informal Systems, had a years-long kind of research program they were already working on that was really making a number of breakthroughs in the ability to formally specify and verify distributed systems. And they were very interested in sort of bringing that expertise and those breakthroughs to industry kind of more directly, and working with us to formally verify Tendermint and to apply the techniques they were developing to real-world software. And that's something it's a long-term program to really have this kind of impact. But we've already made quite substantial progress and have been able to verify protocols that were previously were not possible to be verified in the way we did it. And so that's been very exciting, and that's been really part of the lifeblood and energy of Informal, is that bringing much higher assurances and rigor to software engineering.
One thing that maybe you can talk about is using that on IBC. That's why one of the reasons why IBC so far has been safe of any hacks and anything that the other bridges out there have seen. Is probably the work that was done exactly on that back in 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the team back when we were at the ICF, the really rigorous process of protocol design for IBC started in 2019, and some of our team members were involved in that. And then as the protocol started, as its implementation started to mature in 2020, Informal spent some time in the fall actually auditing more formally the protocol and the software, and writing some specifications that really helped ensure people understood the protocol and the different pieces. And a number of issues were found in that audit. That audit is that report is available publicly. You can check it out. And so a number of different bugs were found in that. Some of them, I believe, were found actually using the tools that we had already been developing that allowed us to test sort of more complicated test cases. So with multiple chains communicating and sending tokens, multiple hops and going back, and so uncovering bugs that you can only find through a sort of more advanced test case. And that's really where formal methods shine. Is it's easy to write simple tests kind of on your own as a software developer, but these more complex tests that require a lot more setup. It might take many thousands of lines of code just to build the test case. Whereas using formal methods, it might be only like 10 lines of a formal specification just to outline the test case you want to execute. So really substantial leverage can be achieved by using these tools. Traditionally, these tools have been very difficult to use. They're clunky. They kind of got they don't really pay much attention to UX. They're sort of seen as academic. And so Informal has really invested a lot of time and attention into making these tools more accessible and easier to use. And especially now with we'll get into it at some point, but our new specification language is called Quint, which is designed first and foremost to delight engineers. And so if you use Quint and you're not delighted, you better tell us about it because it means we're doing something wrong. So, but we've come a long way and have, thanks to the support of the ICF, have been really able to have a huge impact both on Cosmos, but on also tools that are, going to be useful that might, change computing forever, basically. So,
Yeah, I think we'll have a couple of episodes with Igor and Joseph and making sure that we talk a lot more about that, because these are like difficult concepts to grasp. I think especially for non-developers. But today I think we want to focus on informal, and I think something that needs to be said is so formal verification and the audit business in general is really like our fastest growing vertical at Informal, not the Cosmos core dev. And so I guess when I look at the numbers and check that, one has to wonder, like, why do we do so much Cosmos core dev? Why did we take on so much over the years? Why do we do Tendermint? Why do we do Hermes? Why do we work on the Cosmos Hub? Ethan, what's the answer to that? Like, why did we over the years? Why did we take on these projects?
Yeah, so there's been a number of points over the years where we've kind of put our own business priorities aside and throttled the growth of our audit business or our validator business to really focus on Cosmos Core. And that's primarily because we care so much about Cosmos. I'm the co-founder of Cosmos. It's in some sense it's my baby. Of course, it's grown much beyond me, and it's taken efforts of a huge number of other people to help it succeed. But especially since some of the challenges that happened with All in Bits in 2020 and developments over the years, where there's just been real significant need for additional development capacity and organizational capacity to really take care of core pieces of the Cosmos stack, and Informal has been asked over and over again to step in and to support that core development and to take on more responsibilities than it initially expected. Right? Again, initially Informal wasn't supposed to be too involved at all in the sort of core development in Go, and was building some stuff in Rust, and it was going to build Tendermint in Rust, and it was focusing on these formal methods, and it was a small team. But over the years, there's been a number of requests for Informal to help and to take on more responsibility for pieces of Tendermint, for the Cosmos Hub ultimately, and for other parts of the stack, and the team has been willing to go along with that. So we've had to put some of our business priorities and slow down the audit growth more than maybe we could have or should have. But I think that was very much in the interest and to the great benefit of Cosmos that we did that. And so we still care very deeply about these protocols and about making Cosmos succeed. And it's true that it's not like Cosmos development, at least today, is not the most profitable thing we could be doing, but it is very rewarding. And we like to see all the success that this ecosystem is having. And we believe very deeply in the Interchain philosophy, the Interchain technology, the Interchain thesis, and we think that's a key part to achieving our long-term mission. And so we would rather the Interchain is probably going to be better off with us focusing on it than without. And so we've made the decision to support it and take on more responsibilities whenever we've needed to.
Yeah, I think on my side, I think we covered like who is Informal, what is Informal, what is it doing in Cosmos. Is there anything we missed? Anything you want to add about that?
Well, I'm just going to state the Informal mission very clearly, because it's kind of come together and expanded in scope. But we're on a mission to transform the quality standards of three key institutions in society. That's software, how we build and deploy it; money, how we issue and distribute it; and organizations, how we own and govern them. And we believe that the Interchain technology and thesis is key to actually achieving that mission, and that's why we're so invested and motivated to work on Cosmos. But actually achieving the transformation of those institutions is going to be a really long game, and so we're trying to build a sustainable company to be able to work on that in the long term, and to work on change the way people write specifications and engineer their software, change the way people think about and organize their monetary relationships, and change the way people own and govern their organizations. We're structured as a cooperative. We try to walk the talk when we can, and I think that's really helped help our culture, and we have a very unique culture that's been very attractive and for a lot of people who love to work here. So we love being a part of Cosmos, but also having Cosmos itself always had a much larger longer term vision, and we believe that Cosmos really is a tool of political economic expression, and we need to keep that in mind and focus on the long game as we're executing day to day, and that's definitely an attitude we carry at Informal in everything we do.
That's right, and I'm actually one of the people that love to work here. So good job on that. I think we can wrap it up here. Thanks,
good.
And let's talk in the next one.
Thanks, Thibaut. It's a pleasure.